It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer, member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Backbone Planning Partners is a marketing name for registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Now let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons of Small Biz. Today, you've got me. You've got Landon today. It's been a while since I've been with y'all. Super excited to be back. I'm going to be hosting myself as a primary host, and I'll have some of my co-hosts on the next couple weeks. While my much older and worse-looking business partner is traveling across the world. He's over in Europe with his family for a couple weeks. So excited for them to go back and visit the country where his son served his church mission at, and they get to go back and meet some of the people that he met with and share some of the experiences. So Austin, we will miss you greatly, my friend, but safe travels, and hope you have a great trip. So if this is your first time joining, welcome to Tycoons of Small Biz. We are a live radio show and a podcast. We are 109 episodes in now, I believe. Today's 109. And we are a podcast that is put on for small business owners by small business owners. And essentially, we have put together Tycoons and continue to run it with a couple of very simple objectives, and that is to provide a platform for small business owners to come on and talk about their backstory, their personal story, and how they got into owning and running the businesses that they run now, and to ultimately create a community and a good experience for the people that come on, so that it's memorable and it's impactful. All right, so today we got a special guest on the show, and that is Rick Parrilla. And Rick has a really cool backstory, which we'll let him talk to us about in just a few minutes. But Rick, we've got a similar start geographically. I grew up in Southern California, and I believe you did as well. So we want to unpack that. But Rick is the owner of Silverado Custom Door and Windows. So Rick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you grew up in Southern California, right? Whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Charter Oak, which is, I think, just a hair east of Covina, probably about 40 miles east of Los Angeles. I know when we used to go to the beach, it would be about just a hair under an hour drive down to the beach, down to Newport area down there. But they're all connected now. But and I don't know how big Charter Oak is, but Charter Oak, Covina, West Covina area. I was born in Pasadena. So Pasadena was probably about 30 miles west of where I grew up.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I lived in Los Angeles County for about 5 years. I went to Long Beach State and lived there for a while. Absolutely loved it there. But when I was living in Long Beach, my first, my first real job was down in Orange County. Mm-hmm. And it was 16 miles door to door, but I had to leave 90 minutes early every morning to make sure that I got there on time, because I was traveling down the it would have been the 405 southbound, right around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was just a nightmare. So that part of Southern California, I certainly do not miss.
That's something that, I realized growing up. Of course, I've lived in Southern California, then moved up to Northern California, then over to the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. And now I'm in the rural area, west of Fort Worth. But, growing up in Southern California, you get used to a drive, and it's not that big of a thing. And sometimes it might take an hour to go 15 miles. You know how that is. But it's kind of funny because the more rural you get in Texas, people think a 15-minute drive or a 15-mile drive is a lot. And it's like, come on, man, I'm used to driving, an hour or 30 to 40 miles, if not more. I was doing work in Diamond Bar for quite a while, and, it wasn't a bad drive. It was 20, 30 minutes, but it's kind of like it's like you go to your job and you just do what you got to do. And I think things are maybe changing a little bit with the different type of people. It just seems like the generations, things change a little bit on what people are willing to do. But I know that drive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just as we were kind of getting set up for the show, doing the audio and the video and all that stuff, your lovely wife popped into the picture. So we do know that you're married. But take a couple minutes, Rick, and just tell us a little bit more about your backstory. Tell us about where you grew up and what kind of household you grew up in, and tell us about your wife and your kids, and just anything that's important about your past. Sure. So that we can kind of get that picture painted.
Sure. Again, I was born in Pasadena, but I grew up in Charter Oak. Walked to the elementary school, which was maybe, I don't know, a mile. But one of the things I do remember about it, I grew up on a cul-de-sac, and I think we had 14 kids on that street. And then the other cul-de-sacs, there was probably another 10 or so, but summer nights, that was pretty great growing up, freeze tag and find the flag and all the different games we used to play. All those kids were probably within 3 or 4 years of my age. So it was a great place to grow up. I started riding motorcycles and water skiing. That's kind of what we did with my family. We used to go to Lake Mojave, Lake Havasu a lot and water ski. I think I started learn to ski around 7. And I think I got a mini bike about that time too. And by the time I think I was 12 or 13, I was racing motorcycles out in the deserts, surrounding the LA County area. So I always like to do that. Always involved in sports. My wife, Lori, we've been married for 40 years now. We met in high school and started dating when we were sophomores. And then I think we broke up as juniors and got together as seniors and have been together ever since. So she's been a great asset in my life, relationship wise and business wise. And we get along really well. We like to do the same things. We compete in triathlons, and we scuba dive and water ski and wakeboard and snow ski and do a lot of things together. So it's been a blessing. I've got 3 children. My daughter, Jordan, is the oldest. She lives in Fort Worth. She's an interior designer. She studied abroad. She went to Baylor College. She studied abroad in Florence, Italy, and for a short period of time, and learned a lot about wines, and actually worked with the sommelier, and got to where she was pretty darn good at that. And she majored as a journalist, but when she came back to the Texas area, she worked in wine sales, high-end wine sales as a distributor for quite a few years. And then she switched over, and now she's got a very successful interior design company based out of Fort Worth. My son, Nathan, he's 9 days short of a year younger than my daughter. He worked with me for quite a few years, from young, probably 12, 13 years old, all the way till he was probably about 26 in the door business. And now he's a general contractor out on his own. And I miss him in the door shop, but he's been very successful as a building contractor in the area. And then my youngest son, he lives over in Southern California, and he's an agent in the movie industry. So that's just, I remember when he moved over there probably around 6 or 7 years ago. It's like, why did you ever leave Los Angeles? It's great over here. She's like, well, we're just seeking a different lifestyle.
Yeah,
but,
right.
It's been kind of cool. He actually sent me an audition tape. Oh, it's probably been about 8 months ago. At the time, we didn't know what it was about, but it was about, I had to basically do a Zoom audition about my motorcycles and my motorcycle backgrounds and repairing motorcycles. And then I had to kind of pretend like I was polishing a motorcycle. And I ended up getting a call back 2 days later where I had to do a face-to-face with the producer and the director. And we still didn't know what it was about. And Palmer, my son, he's like, I think it's either a Samsung or an Apple commercial. So I did that call back. And then I got a call about 3 weeks later and got hired for the job for this Apple commercial. Flew over to Southern California and went up into it was being filmed in the Hollywood Hills. And it was a really neat experience. It was really an enjoyable thing to do. It was kind of scary because I've never done anything like that before. But we were there for 3 days. Apple actually I think they rented the whole 3 blocks of that area for the shoot. But it was quite an experience. And I really enjoyed talking with all the different, workers and the boom operators and cameramen and all that. It was just, it was a neat experience. So, but that's my youngest over there in California, and that's what he does. And of course, I started, once I had a driver's license, I ended up getting a job with a guy. He was actually an airline mechanic that worked nights. And in the days, he would do remodels and room additions. And I think he just needed somebody that had a truck that would take stuff to the dump. So I did that for him every Saturday for a few Saturdays. And then his name was Alan. And he's like, hey, you interested in working for me on the weekends and after school? And so I think I had football and stuff, but it's like, when I'm done, yeah, I can do that. And it was a really great experience because I think actually when I started work for him, we were just getting ready. He had just had the foundation set up to pour. So I was able to be part of that, setting the rebar and finishing the concrete, framing, and we worked it all the way through to we were, roofed the building. So as a start for somebody to be able to learn all those different trades, of course, I didn't learn them all, but I was, being able to see how it was being done and hands-on. It was a great experience. And that kind of is what started me in the construction industry.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, I got a quick story I'll share with you. I think you'll appreciate this. So I got a picture message yesterday from my mom. I gotten home in the evening and we're sitting there having dinner and my phone goes off and I see these picture messages from my mom and I'm like, what the heck is this? And so I had to zoom in on it, but it was a piece of paper that my mom kept from when this is when I was in 5th grade. And when you're in elementary school, you do these exercises where it's something like this, okay, here's a template and we want you to write down, what you like, what you're afraid of, what you want to be when you grow up and all this stuff like that. So
Sure.
It was just a 1-page piece of paper. And I was reading it and, I started cracking up, because from the time I can go back and actually remember things, I have been obsessed with dirt bikes. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just obsessed. And I asked my parents for years and years and years to get me a dirt bike. And they just said, no, no, no. And then finally, I was probably 8 or 9 years old and I got them to buy me it was a Honda Mini Trail 50. So I was born in 84. So this thing was from the 70s. And so that was my first.
Now, did it have a tank up top or did it have that low bar where you could almost step through the bike? Because I remember a trail, but that might have been more in the 60s type era.
Yeah, I think it did have a tank.
Okay.
Yeah, it did have a tank. And so she sends me this thing yesterday. And the first line of it, this is what it says. I'm reading it to you. Wishes to be a professional dirt bike racer and make enough money. So that's what the first line of this thing says. So we're kindred spirits in that sense. That
well, at least it said and make enough money, because I had an opportunity. I was a very good slalom skier, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but after I left Southern California and went to Northern California, we lived right basically on Lake Shasta, within a mile, and used to go out. You could go out, leave work at 7:30 and still get some nice runs in before it got dark. And I was a pretty accomplished slalom skier. And I think Mike Siderhout at the time had a ski school, and I was skiing one night and they pulled me over and it's like, we'd like to get you involved with our school and, maybe get you into some competing. And, that was a really neat offer or a gesture from them. And then I started looking into what at the time, this was probably early 80s, what professional water skiers made. And it's like, I'm not going to get into that. Nowadays, you've got so many corporate sponsors and everything. I think they all do pretty well. But back then it wasn't much to impress you.
Yeah, right.
So
Well,
did you move on the motorcycles from the trail bike?
I did. Yeah, I worked my way up. I had my next bike was a Kawasaki KX60. And then I rode a Honda 80 for a while. And then I had a CRF 450.
Okay, that's the
And
4-stroke.
Yep, that's the 4-stroke.
Okay.
Yep. And then I sold that a while ago. And then I tried to, I tried to shift gears over to a 4-wheeler. And I think when you've been on 2 wheels, your whole life, going over to the 4 wheels, that transition is just, it's very unnatural, so.
It's not the same, is it?
It's not the same. So I sold my 4-wheeler a couple years ago, and I don't have anything currently, but I've got twins that just turned 2.
Wow.
So, maybe in a year or 2, we'll get them on a little Pee-wee bike, and then, Dad will have to get a bike to ride along.
There you go. That's kind of where I'm at. I think the last bike I had, I've got a road bike now, but the last bike I had was a KZ 250, and my kids, so it's been probably 10, 15 years, but they were competing in motocross and that type of thing over here. And I remember there was a local motocross race, and I went there and decided I was going to compete in the motocross. And man, I think it was, and the same thing happened. I remember, I think the first race I was like 12 or 13, and we were actually just out in the desert somewhere. And I think it was called the DRA, Desert Racing Association. There was probably 200 bikes out there, and they had a race that was getting set up. And I remember I wanted to compete in it. My dad drove up to whoever was running and said, "You mind if my son gets involved in this?" And he goes, "Well, he won't get any points or anything, but he can race along with everybody." I remember we started on top of a hill, and then you drop down, and there was a bunch of whoops in the sand. And, of course, I take off. I think it was a Yamaha 175 Enduro that we put the high fenders on and stuff like that. It was probably maybe 70 something. But back then there really wasn't motocross bikes, at least to my knowledge. You got like an Enduro, and you took the lights off and put the high fenders on, and, did some suspension work. But I remember I took off down that hill, and I thought I was ahead of everybody until I hit the whoops, and it's like, boom, 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 bam, I was down. Adrenaline was in. I jumped back on, got it running, took off, made it about another 100 yards. It was down again. But I think I hit my neck on the handlebars on that. But I've had to learn to control my adrenaline, in all the things I compete in. But that was my first experience with that.
Yeah, very cool, Rick. All right, so let's talk about Silverado custom door in windows. And as I was kind of preparing for our conversation today, I read through the notes in a little bit more detail. And if I understood it correctly, did you acquire the business, or did you start it? So tell us a little bit about that story.
Okay, so I moved to Northern California out of high school, played a very small bit in college football, but that really didn't work out. My size just didn't work at that next level. But I was always in construction. I had a real good construction job. But so I was a general building contractor, and then the economy started dying down. Phoenix was hopping at the time. So I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and get my license in Arizona and see if I can run a business in California and in Arizona, because I remember like Scottsdale, Phoenix was just booming. So I went ahead and did all what I needed to do, flew over there, did my application. I think I got a test date maybe 5 months later, and went over there and did my testing, and became a general contractor. And I think maybe about a year later, I moved from Northern California over to Fountain Hills, which is where are you are you in Tempe?
No, I'm in Vegas.
You're in Vegas. I'm sorry. That's Austin.
Austin's in Gilbert.
Right. So I ended up moving up to Fountain Hills, but really the first decent job I got was, of course, you got, as a general contractor, you got to kind of establish yourself, and there really wasn't any doors opening, but I got a job running some trim crews and for a company based out of, I think it was Gilbert. And so I oversaw that. And of course, hanging doors, the guys hung doors, baseboard, all the interior finish work. So I got to know the door shop in Gilbert, one of the guys there pretty good because I was going there a lot, getting product and stuff. And I was really interested, you know, they had pre-hang door machines. They didn't manufacture anything. They basically would bring in, you know, like 2-panel, 6-panel paint grade doors or a stain grade door, pre-hang it on the door machine with jams, you know, prep it for the locks. And they did multiple and then ship them off to the job sites. And it really interested me watching them do all that work at the shop. And I got to know the guy, Warren, that ran the shop pretty well. And I don't know, something come across. He said, "You really seem like you're interested in this." And it's like, it's pretty interesting, you know, occupation. And I remember he had contacted me, said there was a door shop, kind of like the one that they ran up in Flagstaff, that was shutting down, and they were selling all their equipment. So I ended up going up there, looking at what they had, bought their equipment. And it was kind of the same thing. It was kind of a production type shop where you would buy paint grade and just production type doors, pre-hang them and sell them. But I ended up buying the shop. I think there was one shaper that came with it where you could actually, you know, do your different cope and stick cuts on your, you know, your joinery cuts to where you could assemble a door. But, and I realized it's like, you know, they were in the Phoenix area, I think there were 30 or 40 pre-hang shops. And it's like, you know, I can't compete with that. You know, you start looking at what the costs were and the profits. And it's like, I don't want to get into where I'm competing against 30 or 40 other shops. I want to get into some specialized things. And of course, you know, all my years in construction, one of the people I worked for in Northern California, we did a lot of finish work. We worked on restaurants and bars. A lot of times we would have to work at night when the bar was after the bar closed, but a lot of the finish work. And that's something I really enjoy doing, being able to see a nice finished product and, you know, do those kind of things. But so I kind of decided, you know, of course, being around that, seeing custom doors, I always appreciated that. And I thought decided I wanted to get into building custom doors. Of course, I, you know, was still doing my other thing with the trim company. But, and, you know, you got to realize, you know, there was no internet back then. So not ever working manufacturing doors. It's like, you know, nowadays, obviously you can get on and, you know, look and find anything you want, techniques, tooling, or anything. Back then, there was nothing. I remember going to libraries and trying to find books on how to, you know, the different types of joinery profiles that you could get. And then, you know, even when you find out the different type of joinery profiles, it's like, where do I get them? You know, so there was no networking or anything at all. And basically the most basic joinery technique is a mortise and tenon. I did that for about 1.5 years. Something happened. I don't remember. I finally found a magazine. And of course, it's the same thing. You know, you go into a store or a market and you see like DIY magazines, but nothing for the trades. So just not knowing where to get any of this stuff. The machine that came with that door shop that I bought, it's called a Watkins Burleson. It was made in Europe. And again, you know, no internet, no way to find out how to get a hold of them, you know, because there was some tooling on that. But, you know, not knowing anything about power feeders or any of those tools, it was a struggle. But I remember once we found that one magazine that had professional tooling on it, it just opened up a brand new world. But I studied a lot on joinery. I studied a lot on woods and, you know, cell structures and all that, you know, what happens when you kiln dry wood and what happens when water gets into wood and, you know, how to displace the water. And, you know, just because I wanted to, if I'm going to build a door, especially a custom door, I want it to be the best it can be. And you have to have a lot of knowledge about things. I remember when I was in Fountain Hills, I had my door shop in a industrial park. And there was another industrial park down the way. And there was actually a door manufacturer in there too. And I think he was building George Strait's doors at the time. But one thing I never forgot is they had a pile behind the shop of, 50 to 100, you know, scrapped doors. And it's because they were twisted and warped. But, you know, I went over there one time and was watching him running everything, and just, they didn't take anything into consideration. They would just They would run material through their molder, get the sized up stiles and rails, run them through their shaper profile and put them together. But they didn't look at the crowns of the wood. They didn't look at anything like that. And they just had a lot of rejects. And that's one thing that I can say after finally, coming up to the techniques that I've come up with on building my doors. I don't get rejects, because by the time we get to where the door is completed, we know it's going to be good, straight, and true. And that's, that's been a really good thing. So that's a lot to say in a short period of time.
Yeah. All right. No, that helps. That helps paint the picture, gives us great context, which is, I think just a natural transition into, tell us about the business, today. Tell us, kind of exactly what you guys do and what you focus on. And then that'll probably lead us up into our break here in the next, 3 to 5 minutes.
So one of the things, again, in my years in construction and going up in construction, one thing that always interested me was the finished work of stuff and the finished products. And I remember when I was on framing crews, watching the finished carpenters do their work and staircases and those kind of things always intrigued me. So being able to move into that was always great and enjoyable. And it's something that, in my mind, you can really be proud of. And one of the things I always try to teach my employees, and of course, this day and age, that's a hard subject. Trying to keep and retain employees and the workforce is quite a challenge. And you're never going to have anybody. I mean, I live in a town of 10,000 people, maybe 12, but of course, I've got the Metroplex and everything around me, and we work all over the country. We've got projects we've done in New York, got a lot of projects in Florida, New Mexico, Colorado, pretty much almost every state in the country. But so it really doesn't matter where I'm located. But of course, with my demographics, trying to find employees is always tough. And usually the best I can find is somebody that might be in the construction industry, but trying to teach them the joinery and the, attention to detail is basically the motto of the shop. And one thing I try to teach people is, attention to detail isn't just on the doors. It's kind of a lifestyle. Like when you're cleaning up the shop, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to do it the best you can do it, because that's going to build something in you that's going to require that, kind of more life lessons than just, what I want to produce the shop. But so we always wanted to do unique things. And we got to the point over the years where we do a lot of specialty doors. We did a big project in Orlando, Florida about 3 years ago. In fact, it was in Architectural Digest magazine and Interior Design magazine. The architect won an award for it. We did a pair of doors that were 12 foot tall and 18 feet long, one door. So, and it's neat on those things, because I think after talking to the architect for a while, nobody else would even touch that. And I think with being in as a general contractor and being in the building industry, I learned a lot of things about spans and structures to where I could use that knowledge on putting together large doors and know that they would stay together and stay stable and stay true. And that's a cool thing, to being able to collaborate with the different architects to be able to design a door. But another neat thing about that was, when I'd moved here, I rodeoed for a while and I built an arena on my property. And one of the guys that I became friends with was teaching me how to weld in the arena. So by the time I got done with building this arena, I was pretty good at knowing how to weld. Well, of course, we build these huge doors. I had to build an A-frame to be able to get these things on a truck to travel all the way to get shipped over to Orlando. So that was kind of neat too, to be able to, again, it comes into the past of knowing structurals and spans and be able to, you think about a door that's 18 feet long and you're having to build a metal A-frame, but you've got forks on a forklift that are only 4 feet. So you've got quite a little cantilever hanging off the side where you got to get those forks to lift that whole thing up. And it's kind of neat when you can, pretty much self-design that kind of stuff and get your forklift under it and everything works perfect. So that's always enjoyable. But getting back to your original question. So we've always tried to get into the specialty things to be unique. And as we started building larger doors, 6 foot by 9 foot, 2.5, 3 inches thick, and, getting them, whether it was on LinkedIn or Facebook or our website, more designers and architects started seeing that. So the more that, that started happening, the more specialty, extra large and specialty doors we started doing. So it's almost become a niche now. I mean, we still do a lot of everything we do is custom and it's designed just for each house. But we still do a lot of 308s and 408s and things like that. But we also do a lot of really large stuff. And when I say large stuff, we got asked to do a Dream Street home this last year. And I don't know if you're aware of what the Dream Streets are. I know they've got them in all the big cities, but they basically take 3 or 4 of the top builders and go into a really neat elite neighborhood. Each builder has their own designer, and then they build a really cool house, and then people pay for like a month to go take a tour through these homes. So we just finished one up in Fort Worth that was quite a neat thing. And the door was 6 foot wide, 9 foot high, and then it had full glass transom pivot door, about 3 inches thick. But we got some rave reviews off of that. And now we've been asked to do 2 of the 3 homes in the 2023 Dream Street for 2 other builders, which is kind of neat. So, and again, just, the things like that we're seeing on the project we did in Florida. We had an architect call us out of New York City. He was designing some specialty doors for a new wing at Rice University. We were able to work with him and do some really cool things there too. So we've done work for University of Texas, University of North Texas, and Rice University, along with custom doors for TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, so a lot of the neat rest areas, along with military. We've done a lot of military work too. So, but yeah, we like to get into especially fold and slide pivot doors. We've been named as one of the 10 referred custom door builders for Fritzjürgen, which is a European pivot system, which is really popular right now. They've got hold opens and self-closing activations, and pretty neat hardware.
Yeah, interesting. All right, I'm going to ask you a question about another aspect of your business, but just before we do that, let's just hit the pause button real quick, and we'll hear a quick call to action here.
Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, co-host of Tycoons of Small Biz. If you think you have what it takes to be considered a tycoon and you're wondering how you could become a featured guest, please follow and then message us at Tycoons of Small Biz on LinkedIn. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it is a mutually good fit, and if so, we'll get you scheduled for an interview. If you're unsure about being a guest on our podcast, but are contemplating selling your business over the next few years and you'd like to know what your business is worth, please also follow us and then message us on LinkedIn for your no obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the Tycoons of Small Biz podcast. And now, back to today's program.
All right, welcome back, Tycoons. We're here with Rick Parrilla from Silverado Custom Door and Windows. Having a great conversation, learning a lot about Rick's backstory and how he got into what he's doing now. All right, so Rick, I got to ask you, Silverado Custom Door and Windows. We've talked a lot about doors so far, but I have not heard you mention windows at all yet. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Honestly, we probably do 80 of our sales, 80% are custom doors and the other 20 are windows. We are limited on what we do, and I don't want to say limited, we've limited ourselves on what we do. We do casement windows. So these are all custom wood. We don't do any veneers, any engineered styles. Everything we do with doors and windows is solid wood. So none of the engineered particle board core or anything like that. Everything is solid. But so what we do is casement windows, which are the crankouts. Casements, we do French in-swing windows, which are a hinge window that swing in and have stays. We don't do double hungs or single hungs. So that's kind of where we're limited on that. We just finished a resort up in Red River, New Mexico, where we actually did a large amount of windows. The the place was overlooking the ski lifts up there. But we did all the windows on that, which I think consisted of about 30 windows, and some of them were as tall as 10 foot. And then all the doors and all the flooring on that. But those were all casements if they weren't fixed. And one of the things too, of course, being in the industry a long time, Lowy 366, you're probably familiar with that in the Vegas area. It's got some reflective coatings built into the glass that don't actually, it lets the light in, but doesn't let a lot of the heat in. We did just the opposite in Red River. We used a Lowy 118. And what that does is it lets the heat in, but doesn't let it out. So that way, if you've got a lot of southward facing and you're in the cold weather climates, you're allowed to use the energy and the warmth from the environment to help heat your home, instead of trying to keep it out.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, I'm sure you know plenty about doors and a lot of other stuff around construction, being that you've been in the industry forever. But I will make an observation. I think your passion really lies in the doors, because when we talk about the doors, I can, visually see your face light up, and you obviously have a deep passion for making what sounds like very high quality doors. So let's talk a little bit more about that just for a moment, if we can. So, unlike you, my friend, I can hang a painting on the wall, and that's about the extent of my construction abilities. And I know absolutely nothing about doors, other than we did get a really cool barn door made for us a couple years ago when the twins were born, so that we could close off what was a not an official room, but a bedroom. It was kind of like
Sure.
a second living room, and we made it into a more official bedroom. And we did that with this great custom barn door that was made for us. So you mentioned that you do solid wood doors only. So I imagine there's other kinds of doors. I think you mentioned, engineered, or I think that's a nice way of saying, fake wood doors or metal doors. So talk to us about why solid wood doors versus, something different.
well, to me, and we use lots of different types of wood. We use a lot of exotics, mahogany, sapele, import type woods. We only, of course, exterior doors, we're only going to use a wood that has really good exterior properties, which is, a lot of it's mold resistant, bug resistant. Spanish cedar is a great wood. It's in West Indies and not really Spain, because it's called Spanish cedar, but a lot of it's in Africa, and a lot of it now is being grown in plantations over there. So it's very consistent. It's a real fine wood, but it's rot resistant. It's weather resistant. It's a hardwood, but it's still, we like to do a lot of our real big doors out of that because it's relatively light per square foot or per board foot, if you will. So there's not as much stress load on your joints, on your joinery. Of course, where your rails and your stiles together, you have a cope and stick joint, but you've also got dowels. But when you have a door that weighs 600 pounds and it's all pulling off your hinge side, there's a lot of stresses there. So we like to use the Spanish cedar because it is a lighter, it puts less load on it, but it's a beautiful wood. Solid wood, if somebody's going to pay the kind of money they pay for custom doors, they have, when they started getting into people trying to build cheaper things, they'll get a really beautiful wood, but it might be a 3/16 inch veneer, and they just get junk wood, which is usually scrap. It might be some scraps of knotty pine, little strips, maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch wide, that are glued together, and then they basically wrap this 3/16 inch quality wood veneer around it. To me, it's like if you're building a custom, let's say rebuilding a Porsche or a Lamborghini or Ferrari. Well, you don't want to, people do it. People put the body around a Volkswagen chassis, or something like that, but you really don't have a Lamborghini there or a Porsche. It's a replica. And we just believe if we're going to build solid wood doors and charge what we do for the doors, we're going to do it quality. And the problem a lot of times, that wood inside, that's part of the structure of that door too. And if you've got woods that are soft woods being wrapped by a hardwood, you still, if moisture gets into that thing, it's going to cause a lot of instability. And that's one of the things we try to pick again when we're building, especially exterior doors, woods that are stable and aren't going to move to where, that door in 20 or 30 years is still going to, when it latches against the door stop, it's a nice, nice level latch. It's not touching at the bottom and, half inch away from the stop at the bottom, at the top. So.
Yeah, I understand some of that, but not most of it. But
yeah,
what I can certainly glean, from what you're sharing is that you guys are laser focused on making just very high quality custom doors.
Yeah, and everything we do is made by hand. I mean, we've got machinery that we run, run our components through for our joinery. But it's not like we, throw all these pieces of scrap into a machine and, out comes a door. And we do a really unique, again, your styles on your door are your vertical components, your rails are your horizontal components. And, I was talking about that one door shop in Fountain Hills that had all those doors that just thrown in a pile without getting too into it. A lot of times you can, if you're going to build an 1 3/4 door, you can buy a piece of hardwood that's 2 inches thick and surface it down to, 1 3/4 and in a very rapid motion, put a door together. We do it a lot differently. We basically get 1 inch material. We get it all surfaced. We stack it for a few days, crown it and grade it, find out which way it's wanting to move. And then we actually glue those in a press together to create a style. So let's say you have a piece that's got, let's say I'm going to grade it as a B. It might have a slight arc on it, like the top of a football. You would do the same thing, get another grade B below it and reverse those 2 grain patterns and glue them together that way. That way, that same structure is fighting against one another to create a straight style. And like say you grab the solid piece of 2 inch wood, it's always going to have a bow in it, whether a lot or a little. You can never get that out. But by reversing, going with 2 thinner pieces and reversing your grain patterns, you're going to end up with a real stable door. And that's the kind of things we try to focus on. Again, I've never had to replace a door in 35 years of business. And a lot of people are replacing, dozens a year. And that's just something that we really strive to do. Not only do we want the door to be a beautiful, appealing look, we want it to be put together proper. And, again, doors excite me. And that's kind of neat because I've been doing this a long time and I still love going to work. I'm still hands-on every day working with the guys. And it's neat because every door, especially if we get into doors that are carved and things like that, every door is a piece of art. We kind of consider it a piece of furniture. But it's neat when you can send something out the door or go install it, which we do install a lot. And just have, and have people, oohing all over it. It's rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. So, Rick, there aren't, a ton of people that are walking this earth that can say, that I started in running, successful business in the trades for 35 years. So obviously you're doing a few things right. You made a comment earlier which really struck me, which was we're not just, I'm not just teaching my guys to make these really high quality custom doors, but I'm also teaching them that cleaning up the shop to the same level of focus is just as important as making the door. That really resonated with me because I think that just gives us a really good glimpse into the way that you kind of approach your business. So being that you've been in business for this long, I mean, just share a couple insights with us. I mean, what have you done over all 3.5 decades that have helped your business stay alive and thrive and continue to make these great products? And and maybe talk a little bit about the comment that you made about keeping and retaining employees. So yeah, just share some thoughts and insights around that, because I think what you have to share will be really valuable to the people that are listening.
I haven't thought about that question really, so it's kind of hard to come up with something real quick. But of course, I've gone through recessions. I've gone through in the 80s and even in the 90s. We've seen a downturn. One of the things that I felt with me is, and being in the construction industry before I got into the door business, you would see when you'd have the economy take a turn for the worse, so many people would kind of just disappear. And then all of a sudden, when the economy got good again, all these people would come out of the woodwork. And it kind of started happening. I see a lot, not necessarily in the door industry, because so many companies have gone out of business. It's kind of, especially the custom door business, there's just not people teaching that trade anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's scary because it's a dying trade. And they're getting a lot of machines to do a lot of things, but the level of quality isn't there. But the bad thing is people are starting to see less and less of the quality. So a lot of people are starting to accept a lesser quality product. And that's in everything I see. I mean, of course, we go on job sites and, measure openings and stick levels on walls, and the quality has dropped drastically over the years, and that's sad. But the workforce, I think, in all the construction industry has dropped a lot. But to me, the few things that I can say is stick with it. I mean, there's been times haven't always been great. There's times that are really tough, and it's great to have a wife that'll stand by you and support you when things get kind of tough. It's like I've been to the point, it's like, shoot, where's the next job coming? And thank God the phones rang. But I tell you, about the last 10-15 years, it's just been constant. I've actually, this last year, we worked almost a year straight. I think I had 6 Sundays off, and I finally got caught up. Now, that was one thing I did last year during the COVID, or the year before. It's like a lot of places were closing down, and it's like I've never felt like I wanted to turn work down. And I took on a lot of jobs, and I got behind. But of course, fighting with the COVID and shortages in the lumber industry, it was a trial. But we survived it, and I think we finally got caught up about 5 or 6 weeks ago. So I've actually had the last 6 weekends home, which has been kind of nice. Get to go watch the grandkids play their sports and kind of get back to a normal routine. And we've made a little bit of a decision too, that we're going to start picking and choosing a lot of our jobs, because we can do that now. You don't have to take every job that comes along. But again, to me, is being consistent, is just sticking around and fighting through, hanging in there, get as much knowledge as you can with what's going on in your industry. I mean, to me, knowledge is a lot. There's a lot of things that are changing, and you need to be apprised on all that. One of the suggestions that I would give to anybody that's just starting out is, to me, learning the business was never difficult. I was always hands-on. I've never, shied away from taking any new challenges, even from, starting a business in 2 different states. I was never worried about being successful, because I always knew that I knew what I was doing, and I thought, somebody else can do it. There's no reason I can't do it. But the one thing I would say is learn how to run a business and handle money, because no matter how good you are at building doors or building houses or whatever industry you're in, you need to know how to handle and manage your money. And that was something that was a learning experience over the years, from when I started, that I never had. So it was kind of hands-on learning and trial by error, and finally got that figured out, but probably 20 years too late. So
yeah, well, we're trying to solve a sliver of that problem for some folks. That's something that we talk to a lot of our business owner clients about regularly, just trying to shift the mindset a little bit from just constantly kind of looking in the rear view mirror, and then seeing where you've been, and then, looking at your bank account to understand where you are, to this different approach of, let's look forward through the windshield and kind of project out into the future. anticipate some of your needs, in the future, as opposed to kind of just being, more reactive to the past. But, that being said, you said something there that was really caught my attention. And I think in younger generations, really including myself, so I'm 38, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs in their 20s and 30s, there's this mentality of, building a business in a very short amount of time, 2, 3, 5 years, and then all of a sudden, you're this huge company and you're wildly successful. And the reality is, Austin talks a lot about this on the show. The reality is that is a fraction of 1% of companies that have that kind of a trajectory. And I love how, transparent you were in the comment. You said, here we are now, we're really in this position where we can pick and choose the jobs that we want. And, you're 35 years into your business, and so I think that's just a really good lesson for us younger generations to learn and understand that, building a successful, sustainable business that you want to be around, for decades into the future, this does not happen overnight. This does not happen in 1 year, typically not in 3 or 5 or even 10, so just extending, the outlook, for building a business, I think is just something that is just extremely important, because that's the reality, is that a lot of, successful business owners, their first 3 or 5 or 10 years in business probably weren't all that successful, but the next 5, the next 10, the next 20 years, that's when you really start to see the fruits of your labor.
And, a short comment on that being around so long, I've established a lot of connections with mills over the years, lumber mills, because we buy mill direct most of the time. You have to buy larger quantities. But when COVID hit, we're doing some really multi-million-dollar homes over in South Texas right now that we're going to really be doing for about the next 3 years. And they wanted some specialty woods. And, with the COVID stuff, so many mills had shut down. And, we're searching around, but I've got probably 13 or 14 mills that I've been dealing with over the last 20 years. And it's kind of neat to have that resource to be able to go. And we've been able to find the lumber. Now, of course, the costs aren't, what we were hoping, but that always gets passed on to the builder, unfortunately, but it's nice. And again, it takes all those years of getting to know people and doing business with people to be able to have those connections that end up paying off in the long run. You're not just establishing new relationships. They've been around for a while, and that helps.
Yeah. Perfect segue into our closing thought here. So relationships, obviously business has been around, been successful for, over 3 decades. You've got some kids that are certainly successful in their own rights. But what's the future look like, for the company? Are you trying to get Nathan back in here to take this thing over and run it for the next 30
I don't think Nathan will, but I've got a couple of young guys that are working for me that seem like they have potential. I've had a couple people a few years ago that I thought would be able to, because I don't necessarily want to get out of the business 100%, but it's nice to be able to go on a trip for a couple of weeks at a time and know everything is going okay. And some guys, I had a guy that was with me for quite a few years. He actually started with me when he was didn't even graduate high school. Very intelligent guy, but and I had made the comment after about 3 years that we could possibly groom him to kind of start running things. But all of a sudden, and he was young, but all of a sudden he wanted things to start happening way before he was ready for that to happen, and that didn't work out. So again, the challenge is finding good quality employees, and then hopefully something can go from there. And it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Oil field's a big occupation around here, and it just hasn't worked out to be able to hire oil field employees because it's kind of a different mentality of worker. I mean, they're used to pipe wrenches and sledgehammers, and, we're used to finesse. So very hard to switch somebody over from that. But, and, the high school used to have what they called a DECA program, where somebody interested in the trade would basically take 5th period and 6th period and then work a couple hours after and learn. And it's been neat to be able to have those guys, because they've gone on into some pretty substantial construction jobs after they graduated, college. And they always, reach out and talk to me about the things I've taught them. But, the challenge right now is finding a good, solid workforce. And, I've got outside salesmen that talk to me a lot. And, some of these cabinet shops that used to have 50 to 75 employees are down to family members, and they just, they butt their head against the wall, because just trying to find a workforce, and it's tough. And I don't know how people are surviving without working, but it seems like they are. But I've got a small team at my shop. I've got 4 guys that are all working out pretty darn good. And you just hope that it can continue on. So there's always somebody in the wings, but you like to keep the same guys for long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they say it's a whole lot less expensive to, keep the guys you have than to, go out and find a new one and have to train them. So,
oh yeah, that's a long period of time.
If you get a chance, Rick, you should listen to last week's episode. So Josh Zolan and his dad's, I think Josh is the son. It's a father and son. I can't remember the dad's name.
Was that Windy City, their equipment? Was it Windy City?
Yes.
Something like that?
Josh and Joel Zolan. So yeah, they were actually our first guest on the show.
I did watch that.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So he wrote a book called Blue is the New White. And he's just a big advocate for, for the trades. And so I think you would be, preaching to the choir, having a conversation with him. So maybe you guys should connect sometime. But anyway, Rick, we're pretty much, out of time here. I've thoroughly enjoyed, the conversation with you. Learned a lot about doors as well, which I've enjoyed.
I probably confused you more than helped you.
Maybe a little. But yeah, Rick, so if people want to get in touch with you, can you just share with us, 1 or 2 ways? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Sure. Internet is www.silveradodoors.com. Phone number 940-362-4571. Or you can just look up, custom doors on the internet. Or Custom Doors Texas, and we'll show up.
Okay. All right. Fantastic, Rick. Well, thank you so much for joining. You are certainly a true tycoon, and we look forward to following your continued success.
Landon, thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure, Rick.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business Radio X and your favorite podcast platform.